So, welcome back to the Property Frontline. Today, I'm here with Hei Zhong from K&T Legal, and we are talking about the importance of checking your property contract. So, what can be lurking in that contract? A document that looks so boring when you're starting on your search. Really prefer to look at the properties rather than the document, but it's very important to check the document. So, hi, Hei Zhong.
Morning.
Thanks for joining us today. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I am running a small law firm, K&T Legal from Sydney. We specialise in assisting clients with purchasing and selling their property across New South Wales and Queensland. And we are also immigration lawyers as well.
Yeah. So you've got that like both are very complex areas. I thought you were going to say, I specialise in answering Deb's really difficult questions because you do that as well. Alrighty, so let's jump into our topic. So what's hiding in your property contract and why it's useful to read it? So what should buyers look for in the contract just at that initial stage when they're starting their search, they've found a property they like, and they actually say to the agent, can I please get a copy of the contract?
Okay, so just to start with, I guess making sure that the address of the property is correct on the contract. It seems like a really simple one, but you'd be surprised how many, properties the agent's dealing with, they don't necessarily check and they'll send you a contract. So just make sure it is for the right property, number one. Number two is to look at the completion date or the settlement period, which is usually on the front page. That will tell you how much time you have to get everything sorted before the property becomes yours. So depending on what your situation is, you may need a little bit longer or shorter. So that is a good indicator of roughly how long the process will take. And number three, what we always ask our clients to have a look at is the inclusions marked on the front page of the contract. So what are you buying and what's included? The reason for this is we actually never get to see the property itself. So when we're talking to a client about what they're buying, it's great for them to see what contract says that you're buying and what they've actually seen at an inspection to make sure both are the same, and this helps when they later on speak to us about the contract as well.
Yeah, okay. And so because you cover New South Wales as well as Queensland, so the New South Wales contract has all the inclusions on the front and a lot of really good information on that very front page. But the Queensland contract, it's like about 3 or 4 pages in. And with the inclusions, a lot of the agents just are not including or excluding anything. So remember, we've had a few of those conversations with clients where they're like, exactly what's in there? And what's the explanation you give people about how to know what, if there's nothing written in there, what's included and what's excluded?
So with Queensland, what they usually say is if you were to tip the house upside down and the items fall out, then they would usually not be included in the sale. If the items are fixed and if the house was tipped upside down and they remain on the property, then they would be included in the sale. Yeah. However, if there is a particular item that you really would like included in the sale, it's probably worthwhile negotiating to have it written into the contract just so there's no issues come settlement.
Yeah. Yeah, because a really good example is the dishwasher.
Correct, that's right. Because it can be fixed and sometimes it's not.
It's not. There's nothing worse than turning up and going, where is it? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. And so one of the other things that I like to check with the New South Wales contracts is the sewer diagram. So if you flip all the way to the back, and so if we are starting to get a little bit technical, but if there's a council sewer pipe running through the property at a very inappropriate location, well, then it might be something that you might use to negotiate the price down, or you just might ask a few extra questions. Okay, alrighty. And so why is it, I love this question, why is it important to work with a solicitor when you're buying a property?
I think Working with a solicitor is important because we tend to help you ensure a smooth transaction, and to help you understand what's actually included in the sale or excluded in the sale, as well as what your actual rights are during the process.
Yeah. And I know you've got tons and tons of stories, but we had a really good example. I think it was only last week where what looked like a pretty standard contract, the vendor's solicitor had added a couple of, or excluded a couple of very important things. Do you want to talk about that? Do you remember what that is? You see so many.
Yeah, so a lot of people like to say that a contract is a standard contract. But to be honest, there's probably no such thing as a standard contract, because there is a set contract that's set for conveyancing purposes. However, the conditions in a standard contract can always be amended by what's included in the special conditions. Now, when we review a contract, we go through all the special conditions and advise you as to what's changed in a contract and try to negotiate it so it's a little bit more beneficial for you as the purchaser, as in most cases, the contract's drafted to benefit the seller. So in this tricky one that we had last week, what the seller solicitor actually did was remove some of the important things you would expect to occur, such as, final inspection. They slapped additional costs for cancelling settlement or rescheduling settlement once it's already been scheduled, those sort of things. Now, look, it's not unusual for, those things to be charged. So you may charge a $50 to $100 to reschedule. But in this particular case, it was actually the cost of potentially half a conveyance for that scenario. Yeah. So it's tricky, and it's good to spot out, because look, it could have just been a typo that could have been fixed, or it could have genuinely been the price that you would have to pay should that scenario occur. So just going through those sort of conditions beforehand, understanding them, and then making sure they don't apply. They're some of the things that, that's part of our role when we review the contract to point you to.
Yeah. Okay. So it is critically important. And I think really these days, with PEXA and everything like that, like your solicitor coordinates all of that, don't they?
Yes, we do. So PEXA is basically an electronic settlement platform that's now used for most transactions. But before you get to that stage, it's important to have the contract reviewed, because different scenarios would have different requirements. So, for instance, if the property is listed for auction, you need to make sure everything's checked. You do your due diligence before you attend the auction, so that if you're successful, you're not locked into a contract that you don't really understand.
Yeah. Exactly.
Whereas if you sign, if the contract is under a cooling off period, well, that's what that cooling off period is for, to go through and check everything and do your due diligence. So I think if you've never been through the process before, it's probably worthwhile having a chat with a solicitor before you start on your property hunt, just so you understand the different ways a property is sold and what you should do before you make an offer on a property.
Yeah. And so just so we're clear, if we're walking through the process, so if I'm a buyer, I'm looking at properties. If it's my first time, the best time to come and speak to you would be just as I'm starting out. Yeah.
I would say so. Yes. Look, you can reach out to us at any time, but if you are starting out for the first time, I'd welcome a call just to have a quick chat, so I can just explain to you, gauge what you're like, you can gauge what we're like, because we do have to work together through the settlement process, which can be weeks or months. So, just make sure you're on the same page. We can simply go through what's required during the process, depending on how the property is being sold. So you have a little bit of an understanding. And then you don't actually have to speak to us until you find a property that you like to kick off the process itself.
Yeah. And so if I've already had a chat with you, then I go out and start looking at some properties. I always should be asking the agent for a property that I'm really interested in, get a copy of the contract and just check off a few of those things. You're not expecting buyers to be solicitors, but at least gather information from the contract that is important to maybe starting to think about your offer, or something that would make you go, no, I'm crossing that property off. Keep going. And then once you're starting to really narrow down a property, but particularly if it's at auction, we come and talk to you at least a few days, ideally a week prior to the auction.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then if it's not going to auction, we should have a chat to you when we're starting to really have serious conversations with the agent about price. So during the buying process, it can get really busy very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so your solicitor should be part of that negotiation process with the agent. Yep.
That's correct.
Yep. Okay.
The earliest that you can, I would reach out to our solicitor. Like I said, just get to know them, let them know that you're starting your journey and looking at properties, and and then start the journey with them from there.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Alrighty, so wrapping up then, any extra quick tips or myths you would like to mention? It's really important to not sign anything.
That's true. Don't sign anything until you actually understand or what you are signing, and make use of any of the professional services that are available at your hand. Okay, that's available. Use their knowledge, experience to help you to make sure that you get the best, transaction as smooth as possible in acquiring your property.
Yeah, exactly. But I know we see a lot of buyers who will be talking to the agent. The agent's been really helpful to them, and then they'll say, just sign this. This actually happened to me. I'll be talking about the building and pest report or something like that, and they'll say, just sign this and you can do the building and pest after you sign. But if you haven't negotiated that, you can't be, that you'll withdraw unless the building and pest report is successful, well, then you're stuck with the property without doing a building pest, right? Yeah, that's why it's really important to make sure you speak to the solicitor first.
That's correct. Don't sign under pressure. Make sure you have had that conversation with your solicitor before you sign. Just check in with them, let them know, what you have seen on the contract, if you're, knowledgeable enough to go through it all. If not, have a chat to them, give them a call, just say, I'm planning to put in an offer. Can you review the contract? And I'm sure that can be sorted out for you before you sign.
Yeah. Sounds good. Alrighty. Okay. Well, thanks so much for answering all my little questions, and thanks to everyone for watching. If you want to reach out to Haejung, her contact details will be in the description. And of course, you can always contact me at the Property Frontline. So for now, we're going to say goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Deb. Bye.